We'll give people a minute. We're blinded by the light of Mo Green. It's not rare that I get a superintendent in my house.
Well, good to be here, and you have a wonderful house. I could not have scripted a better day to be out here.
We are having a little party in Edenton today that is open to anybody that possibly. Okay, we're good. We're on Verizon data. Mo, how many days till the election?
Oh, probably somewhere around 25, 26 days.
26 days. How are you feeling?
I feel good. Excited about all the people we've met. Certainly, the latest polls still have us statistically tied. And so that means we got to run like we're behind, which we are doing.
Right. Tell me a little bit about yourself for people that don't know, because I think a lot of people out there, why it's tied is that people, maybe they vote straight ticket. Maybe they say, I'm a Republican. Like my husband has been in the past where he's like, well, if you have a brain, you can't vote for these people. So I think that's interesting. So tell us about you.
Yeah, so maybe the way to do it is to contrast me against my opponent.
Okay.
And that might help folks understand the distinctions between us. And I'll do it with regards to experience, belief, and character. So with regards to experience, my experience is I served as superintendent of Guilford, state of North Carolina.
Wow.
While there, because of the great work of the educators and parents and community, we raised graduation rates pretty dramatically, also increased student performance on academics, increased the number of students who took and passed college level courses while still in high school and exams while still in high school. We also were able to be recognized as a national district of character.
Wow.
And we started a few STEM-related schools, a parent academy as well. And so lots of wonderful things happened while I was there in Guilford County Schools. Before that, I was the deputy superintendent and chief operating officer and the general counsel, so top lawyer, if you will, for Charlotte and Mecklenburg schools, which is one of the two largest districts in the state with about 130,000 students.
And now you went to Duke.
I did go to Duke.
Undergraduate and for law school.
That's correct.
Now, I went to Meredith College, Carolina, and State.
Yeah.
I love Duke. And it's rare, but you know why I love Duke? Because I love Coach K.
Okay, well.
He's a good egg.
He is a good egg.
And the State Carolina people, they're just jealous of Coach K. So that's why they don't like him. But I'm beyond that.
That's right.
So anyway, I love some Duke.
And so, so by comparison, so I have 15 years of actually being employed in school systems.
Right.
I also did other things, including running the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, a large North Carolina foundation for 7 years, supports many things, including public education.
And what was the budget of Z. Smith Reynolds per year?
So what we would give out in grants would be somewhere between $15 to $20 million, depending on the year.
Right.
Right. And so by comparison, my opponent, she homeschools her children. Right. Nothing against homeschooling.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people think, well, I don't mind if anybody homeschools.
Me neither.
Because it's a wonderful thing. But just because I slap a Band-Aid on my children doesn't now mean that I'm a doctor.
There you go.
Right.
And so that's where I say the first distinction is. I mean, if you homeschool your children, nothing against homeschooling, but you're now talking about the position that we're running for is the Chief Administrative Officer for Public Schools, right? It's a massive undertaking. You're talking about 2,500 plus schools. You're talking about 1.4 million students. You're talking about a budget annually of $11 billion administered.
Right.
So experience is
real
different between the two of us, right?
Yeah,
Then the second would be belief in our public schools. My wife and I, we believe in our public schools. We had blessed to have 2 children. We were also blessed to be in a situation where we could choose where we sent our children. We chose to put them in our public schools because we knew that they were good.
Right.
And they delivered. And to the point where 6 years ago, I wrote a letter to Charlotte Mecklenburg schools where they started and Guilford County schools where they graduated from, thanking our public school educators. Some have called it a love letter to public schools.
I hadn't seen that. Okay.
Yeah, so we actually have some here, so you can have one tonight. As opposed to my opponent, again, homeschools the children, but goes further than that.
Right.
Calls our schools, all sorts of things, including that they're absolute cesspools of evil, lies, and deception, that they've been taken over by Satan, these sorts of things, right? And then,
and from somebody who's had, my kids have been in public school collectively 33 years, 4 children. My littlest has special needs. You haven't met Amos. Hopefully you'll meet him when he comes in tonight, but not to take over Mo's role, but she wants to, quote, bring special education back. And here my son with disabilities is with his typical peers almost all day. And they love him and adore him. And she calls children like my son retarded. And it's like, my mother was like, oh, no one says that anymore. This is a person who doesn't understand the internet, but she knows, how can somebody like that represent me or 100,000 kids? And it's too much.
Yes. Yeah, and so you think about, so my mother was actually a special education teacher, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
And, and so learned a lot from her. Folks in Guilford County know a lot about my mother because I would always tell them,
okay.
I'm going to run the school system like she would want to run.
Right.
Which leans then on many of the principles of special education, this sense of inclusiveness, the sense of setting goals and then celebrating goals and then setting broader goals and then celebrating those as well. So that would be the second thing, right? And then character would be the third. And in Guilford County Schools, what we did is we made character development equally as important as academic outcomes. That is how then we got to be recognized as a National District of Character for the work that was done there, as opposed to my opponent, who took her own children to the attempted insurrection on January 6, 2021, comes back from that the same night, puts herself on video, where there literally has already been loss of life, and says, President Trump, you're in office 2 more weeks. How about you set aside the U.S. Constitution, bring in the military, arrest anybody who helped certify the election for treason. This is also a woman who has called for the executions of many. President Biden, Governor Cooper has called for the public execution on pay-per-view of Barack Obama. Has said all sorts of things to the point that what we've decided to do is to create a website that folks can go to that's called abcmorrow.com. And each letter, A through Z, is something that she has put out there herself. So it's her own words or her own self on video that really would call into question her character.
Can I guess what D is?
You can. I don't know that I can remember what D is.
I hope D is I don't believe in dinosaurs. Because she doesn't believe in dinosaurs.
Yeah, I don't remember. There were so many that, I don't know. So we weren't able to put everything, even with 26 letters, everything on there.
That's very big to me. I've been to the museum, I've seen the bones, and she says, there are people that think this earth is millions of years old. We know this earth is a very young earth. Well, that means you can't believe in dinosaurs. What, is this all a scam?
Yeah,
I mean, that's nuts.
I mean, it's amazing the kind of theories that she has, tweeted about or retweeted, things like celebrities drinking the blood of children so they can live longer.
Yes, adrenochrome.
Adrenochrome. Things like the plus in LGBTQ includes pedophilia. Which is, I mean, if you think about that for just a moment, and this is something she put out a few weeks ago. So this is in the midst of the campaign. She puts this out, and please understand, the LGBTQ community is a very vulnerable community in general, in our schools, where we're trying to be sure that they're safe and welcome. Can you imagine what that does?
Okay, we're back.
Okay, so it's something that, again, speaks to character. Right? And whether this is the kind of character we want next to our children.
Well, and I want our teachers, I think, I know teachers. I've been on PTA, I've made copies, I've read books, I've done anything I can do at public school. And I have never seen a teacher indoctrinating all I see are our teachers busting their ASSs. I mean, they are not there because they're getting rich. They are there because they love these kids and believe that education is the path to a good life.
Oh, absolutely. And so that's why you will hear me say very clearly that I revere educators. So I've chosen a word that's higher than respect.
Right.
To be sure that folks understand how much I revere them. This is a noble profession that does transformative work on behalf of individuals, certainly families, community, our economy, the
Right.
state, the
Right.
nation, and beyond, right? Now, I also am very clear when I use the term educators that I'm not just talking about our teachers. Certainly I'm talking about our teachers, but I'm talking about everybody who has a part to play in the education of our tomorrows. And so that's the cafeteria workers, the bus drivers, the custodians.
Right.
They all get up with this idea of I'm doing something critically important
Right.
for our community, for those individuals that they are interacting with, et cetera.
Well, and you said the economy. We were talking about this a minute before, but the school system in Chowan County, where you are today, it's the largest employer in our county. And so there's this thought of, well, public schools are fine, but they're the nucleus. So if the public schools fail, then we lose our employer. And that has happened in some states. School systems have had to shut down. And I think with this voucher program, when I say to people in Chowan County, if you're voting for a voucher, you're voting for your tax dollars to leave the county because we don't have private schools in this county, right?
Right.
Does anybody want to watch their tax dollars go to Charlotte? I don't.
Correct. Certainly not for something like that, right?
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, what's also deeply troubling is tax dollars also leaving the community, but they're maybe going to Charlotte to allow a wealthy person who can already afford to, pay the tuition for the private school, may already have their child in private school, will now get to take advantage of it. So your tax dollars are, I mean, if you talk about a really challenging, way to think about this is a good use of our dollars, it is not. Particularly when then these dollars are so needed in our public schools.
Right. So 50% of people that get vouchers make over $125,000 a year, and 20% make over $250,000 a year. So that leaves the rest for the people that make under $125,000 a year. So when vouchers started, they were for poor families to escape struggling school systems. And the General Assembly changed the law last year, so now suddenly you don't ever have to go to public school. You could be in private school for 10 years, and it's a tax cut.
Correct.
Or a tax break.
Correct.
Call it a tax break.
Correct.
In my mind,
Yeah, and so, I mean, if you think about it, though, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars now that are going to private schools.
$500 million.
And this will now be, over the next 10 years, projected to be over $5 billion.
$5 billion.
Think about where we are in North Carolina with public schools, just for context, and you know these numbers, Adrian. We're 48th in the entire country
Right.
with regards to what we fund our public schools.
48th.
If you compare us per pupil, national average, we're over 16,000. Virginia, as an example, is over 14,000. South Carolina is over 15,000. North Carolina is a little over $11,000 per child.
Right.
Yeah, so this is, now you're talking about more dollars going away from our public schools at the very time that we are at or near the bottom.
Right.
And need those dollars in our public schools.
Right.
So, and then this, so folks also will question, well, because sometimes you might find yourself 48th if you can't afford to do any better than 48th, right? Compared to other states, where it turns out we can afford to do much better.
Yeah,
but
we can.
The effort that we're putting into it, a report a few years ago has had us at the absolute bottom. We're now 49th in the country with regards to the effort that our state can put into our public education.
And people will say to me, how are your schools? And I will say, we have the best teachers in the world. All our teachers are in our public school system. They are amazing. What our struggle is poverty and money. We don't have the funds. If the funds are based on property values, when I was in grad school at State, my professor in finance put the equation for how schools are funded in North Carolina on a chalkboard, because I'm almost 50. And it was 2.5 rows across the chalkboard of this equation. And at the time, he said, we have a very different funding equation than most states do.
Correct.
And I didn't think anything about it, but now I'm living in a poor county and I see it's expensive to live here. So it's not like it's inexpensive to live here. So why would our teachers don't come here?
Yeah.
You know?
So, yes.
They don't come.
Yeah, I mean, you've made several important points in what you've just shared. Your professor, you know, the equation I used to talk about, and I still do, is the money to our public schools comes in so many different colors, right? And so you got to understand how all of those colors work together to produce the appropriation ultimately that ends up in the school. Now, most of the dollars that go to our schools actually are going to teacher salaries,
Right.
and are going to educator salaries. But because we're so depressed in what we're providing to public education, then you also see that we are, you know, near the bottom, not at the absolute bottom, but near the bottom with regards to what we are paying our educators, in this case, our teachers.
And your opponent, Michelle Morrow, wants to turn away federal dollars, which is what, $1.1 billion a year we get in North Carolina?
Yeah, so it's a huge amount of money. The way I like to think about it is this, just to maybe make it a little bit more tangible to folks. So
Right.
in most districts, it's going to vary slightly, but in most districts, about 10% of the budget that a district has are actually federal dollars coming in to support our schools. Now, think about where those dollars are going, because most of the federal dollars are very directed. They go to things like Title I schools, which are going to be for,
So we are.
yeah, so a lot of Title I schools are providing resources, additional resources to schools that have a high level of students that are socioeconomically disadvantaged, or many on free and reduced lunch.
Right.
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 Another place where those dollars are going are for special education services.
Yes.
Where we already know that there's much more we need to be doing and
Right.
resourcing for our special needs children.
Right.
Can you imagine if those dollars go away? Now, what my opponent has said, well, the state will pick them up. Well,
Has she met the state?
let's be reminded the state has already decided that we're not going to do it
Right.
at a reasonable level. And if we have any extra dollars, rather than giving, I mean, our General Assembly came back into a special session, not to do things like say, let's give our teachers a pay raise, but to actually say, let's give those dollars to private schools
Right. Right.
for the wealthy.
Right. Well, who I admired a lot was June Atkinson. And having Mo back, I feel like I'm having a taste of June Atkinson. And I'm just really appreciative and supporting you. And we have to now go because we have people waiting to meet Mo that are in Chowan County. But I appreciate you being here, and I'm Team Mo all the way.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me this evening, and in your beautiful home. I've already met some of the folks that have come in. Looking forward to meeting more.
Sorry for the dog barking and the fire alarm. This is Tales. This is typical life around at the Woodhouse.
Very good.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.